I want to put this comment pinned up here. Like this. Pin comment. There we go. There you go. Okay. Okay. So I'm doing a live to do the reading of my book. Oh, good. How are you holding up right now? Okay. I have to read it from my computer because I only have the, what do you call it? The pre-printed version. Like, this is my copy of when I was trying to test things, and this is not updated, but it has the pictures I can show you. But you can find it on Amazon. If you look up in books, Running and Tumbling. This is part 1. Hey, Angel. This is part 1 of a series I'm still writing. So, part 1 is the shock, 2 is process, then release, 3 is forgiving, not forgetting. Hey, Diana. But I'll explain why it's a series in a little bit. So I'm reading it, but I have to do it on the computer. Okay. But you can actually follow with me if you go on Amazon and look inside the Kindle version. Okay. The beginning starts as a message from my 2017 self. In the summer of 2016, I took a study abroad class in Nice, France. On Bastille Day, a terrorist attack hit on the Promenade d'Anglais. I was on the beach with my class. We had just missed the driver. We heard his shots and the shot that killed him. These are my sketches starting the day after the attack, and the subsequent sketches upon returning home. I had just moved to a new city and started school. These are my drawings of my trauma and my healing. I have sliced them into 3 volumes. In each volume, you see the beginning, middle, and continued healing of my trauma. I hope that if ever you feel terror, if ever you feel lost, you see these images and find yourself again. 2019. In the summer of 2016, I had just turned 26 years old. I was determined, very spiritual, and I was frustrated. I thought that I should have had so many things figured out. I should have had so many things achieved. I thought I'd been through a lot now, and now is when I prove to the world that I had overcome. Now is time when I show off my youth and all the things that I could accomplish despite what my circumstances had been. I had had plans for art world domination, but I found myself with a scholarship and a grant. So I chose to apply for a study abroad class in France. I wasn't expecting to get in, but I did, and I left the country believing that I was invincible, untouchable. I had been through hell already, and there was nothing else that would be able to shake me. I wasn't prepared to have to run for my life. I was also not prepared for how this experience would proceed to open up every trauma I had ever had, and make me feel every feeling I'd ever buried. I became a raw, open wound with every nerve exposed. I couldn't hide what I felt from anyone, and when I tried, it would all come pouring out. In every moment of my stay in Nice, I carried a real terror, a constant and overpowering fear that would cling to me for the next 2 years. I thought that since I had overcome my childhood sexual abuse, my adolescent beatings, my sexual assault experiences as an adult, that I knew fear. But this was something altogether different. This was a feeling of the end, a crisis of faith, an existential crisis. I started to believe that I had been born to simply suffer and experience only catastrophic things, that there was no running from this fate, and I would have to somehow come to face it. The pain that came from this idea was so deep I had no idea how to cope. I tried to speak to counselors, but our conversations were echoed sounds inside of empty cans. People would try to relate, try to give advice, try to give recommendations, but I couldn't connect to any of it. I felt absolutely alone. I didn't understand why I had survived. I was constantly crushed with the guilt. Every move I made and word I spoke felt undeserving. I couldn't breathe under the weight of it. I was there and I survived, but for what? And if none of these other horrible things that had happened in my life were enough, what would be? Was there more to come? It became a puzzle with no answer, but I just wanted so badly to know why me. None of the spirituality I had practiced prepared me for the impact of this question. I had been holding on to the idea that if I kept my faith in the universe, prayed, and stayed positive, that even the worst experiences could be things to learn from, to get stronger because of. I practiced this from a very early age. It was the only way I knew how to live. Even though I had survived, this event somehow proved that there was no pattern, no being connected to the universe, no one looking out for me in the cosmic sense of things. I was alone, and I had always been alone. My fear grew into anger. I tested fate and sent myself to teeter on the very edge of death. At that edge, I was humbled, incapacitated, and recognized value in everything I saw and felt, but myself. I tried to keep pressing on toward my dreams and goals. I tried to keep up fighting for myself and my work, but I wasn't myself enough to believe in who I was, or to keep up the fight meant for my dream to become a reality. I was dying and I kept asking for help, but I didn't know how to accept it for a self I no longer was. I was someone else entirely. Someone not even I could recognize. You may flip through this work haphazardly, without putting yourself inside of the moment, inside of the colors I chose, the environment I decided to try to find my peace in, the words I put down. It's what most people do when they're not sure what to make of what's in front of them. It's what most people have done when I've shown them these drawings. What they didn't understand was that this is a huge part of what has saved me, not just during this particular trauma, but my entire life. Drawing, painting, writing, making things, it took me away from the pain of where I was. It helped me find a way to witness a world that I created and brought into reality. It reminded me that this world that I wanted wasn't impossible, and it was closer than it seemed. It allowed me a language that could articulate the most painful moments and feelings in my life in a way that words never could, in a way that could speak to someone else without them. And if when you read these words or see this art, you feel something inside of you stir, feel it. Feel where it takes you, and if it takes you too far into the brink of madness, where I'm far too familiar, find help. Reach out to people who love you and tell them the entire story, not just the most digestible parts, but the whole story. Fight for yourself, for your peace of mind, for your mind, period, so that you can find the ways that keep you living in life, not just existing, not just surviving, not just pretending to live. I pray that you find that peace and that this series can inspire you to create something that helps remind you to come back when you're too far in the madness. This is just the beginning. The wound is open. So that is the intro. And so the whole point of this first book is to kind of talk about the initial impact of like the shock of the trauma. And I wanted to split it up into parts because I think that it's hard to digest something that you're not ready for. So I figured like if I put it into different parts of like say like where you're at emotionally, it'd be easier to connect with. So the shock is like I'm writing, you know, really raw from the perspective of somebody that's kind of still in it. So like a lot of the things that I wrote aren't necessarily what I believe now, but it's what the me then did. So like that's another part of what I wanted to talk about in the next, you know, volumes, because in this one there's not really a lot of room to discuss that because the initial impact is so like more has to do with like your emotional and physical response to what happened. Hey, so so yeah, that's the beginning part. Um, and something that I noticed was uh, in writing this that there's so many different parts of like what I am trying to like evaluate, you know, like so in the second part I need to talk about, you know, the different selves. And I think too it's really important to get this out there now because I feel like collectively that's what a lot of people are going to be experiencing. So like um the different self of so the you before the trauma, the you during, and the you after. And that is kind of like the 3 volumes too. Um, and I don't know. Oh, I don't know. If this makes sense then. See, like this one describes that. I woke up wondering if everything would be different. Then I go outside and realize everything already is. So yeah, I was hoping that that when I was sharing this, that I know some other people who have like really interesting stories too that have to do with this. These are all some of the drawings that I did while I was there, and you can kind of feel like the like I don't know if you can feel how like freaked out I was, but I was like a lot of out of body experience, a lot of is it backwards for you guys, the words? And so yep. Did anybody else have a way they've kind of like overcome their um overcome their you know, their stuckness in their trauma? That's what I wanted. Was I was really hoping that somebody else would kind of like come in and talk about it with me and back up what I'm trying to say, because I don't know if everything that I'm talking about makes any sense. Okay. I'm just gonna keep reading. Okay. So Volume 1. One minute the sand was crowded and covered with people, fireworks bursting into colors and booming throughout the city, and the next it was just me and my group on an empty beach covered in a light from a nearby helicopter. Everyone was running. We kept trying to stop people to ask what was going on, but we couldn't communicate. Bang, bang was all they could tell us as they hurried off the beach. We hurried with them and approached an armed military officer to ask what was happening. Go, run. I turned to run back to the group, but tripped and landed on the curbside onto both my knees. I fell. I was so stunned by what was unfolding. This can't be real. Panic erupted in me. We ran. A couple of my friends knew the back streets back to the hotel we were staying at. We calmed each other down as we ran and cycled through moments of collectedness and terror. Part of our group had gotten separated. We waited for them at the hotel. My memory after arriving there is vague now. I drowned myself in rosé after uploading a video to Facebook saying that we were all safe and accounted for. I remember getting calls and texts and that I didn't want to return any of them. I remember someone reciting the death toll as it got higher throughout the night and my wailing at each number. I remember being inconsolable. I'm not sure if you've ever woken up the next day after a catastrophe. You can almost feel the hesitation in your soul before you wake up. You don't even want to come back to open your eyes and see this new world that's yours now, that you had no choice to opt out of, like waking up into the nightmare you were already having. My ears were ringing. My group was called to meet up at the school to talk about how we would proceed. Our teachers thought it was important that we carry on as usual, that there would be counseling available to us. I didn't know from where or when it was supposed to be available. Some of the group were disturbed by my behavior. I seemed very emotionally impacted by the event, they said. I should speak to someone, they said. I've been told that everyone processes trauma differently and at varied paces. I felt crazy for the way I was processing mine. Throughout the day, I tried to keep myself together, my bubbly, funny self. I'd try and wander off to be alone and find my own adventure. Our class took us on excursions every day to museums and other nearby cities. We'd learn and paint and explore. At night, after our lecture, we'd go out on the town to dance and drink. Then is when all my feelings would come crawling out, in sobs and endless shame-filled tears. I kept listing all the traumatic things that had ever happened to me to justify my relentless crying. Why I felt so out of control in that moment. It didn't seem like enough to say that the attack had awakened old ghosts back to haunt me again. I would find myself in awe of artworks on walls that I'd only seen in books and continuously be reduced to weak knees and more tears. Fatigued by beauty in the day and by nightfall of memories of that deadly night and all the nights before it that had caused me to fear. All the nights I'd ever known that were ugly and dangerous. I tried so hard to hide all of this. It was like getting hit in the gut and trying to keep a straight face. Maybe it was right for them to feel disturbed. I wasn't making a lot of sense at the time. I wandered around praying that someone would tell me something that would magically give me peace and make this feeling end. But instead I was stuck, regularly wanting out of my own skin. It's just about how you respond to things that makes the difference, they'd say. Everyone's been through difficult things. They seemed like peaceful things to say, but they didn't feel anything like peace. Every time I saw anyone running, I'd panic. Loud noises, panic. I wanted to close my eyes and disappear. I already showed you some of these drawings. Coming home was difficult. I had been sharing my thoughts and feelings with Facebook and somehow came to believe the response I saw meant that I would have people who would be there for me when I came home. I was disappointed. I met many people and made a lot of friends, but none who could understand where I had come from. If they had, it was too difficult for me to see. There were ones who exploited my story as an attraction, ones who took advantage of my vulnerable state, and ones who took my being fun as entertainment for themselves. In these, I had started binge drinking. It had gotten worse when I got home. A couple of these drawings are from blackout, drunken adventures, more instances of ways that I was fun. It was too painful to continue on as the person I was before. I tried to convince myself that it was performance, and I could grow into this new self privately, but the two intertwined and I wouldn't know where they each started or ended. I never even considered that being myself might be an option, because I was still so ashamed and engulfed by guilt. I wanted to run away from both of myselves. I felt bad. I felt bad that I kept drinking, that I was nasty to my friends, and that I didn't do enough on Bastille Day. That I got back to the hotel with my friends who showed us the way, and I was so terrified I drank myself into oblivion and cried all over the place. I felt bad about being alive, but no longer invincible. I was also angry that I felt so much responsibility in having this experience, that it even happened in the first place, that people around me were so oblivious as to why it affected me so much, that they were literally telling me to get over it, that I was being told I was being too sensitive. The reality in all of this made me want to run away even more. But the more I tried to run or ignore it, the more it seemed to find me. I started my second semester of my Bachelor of Fine Arts program almost immediately, and just a month or so after that, moved to a new city. I needed to be closer to school to make the commute easier, but I was honestly hoping that something new would shake some life back into me. From the moment I stepped off the plane, I had felt completely numb, and whenever I'd begin to feel something, I wanted it to stop. I almost died 3 more times once I'd returned home, the first of the 3 that you might notice in the next set of drawings, if you're paying particular attention. I wound up with a concussion that no hospital wanted to treat. I had impaired vision in one eye, and I couldn't remember how to get home from school. I finally had to lie. I fell down some stairs, and this had nothing to do with me drinking to excess alone to stifle the pain. I kept trying to connect with people, but instead found myself in dicey romantic situations. I don't know what exactly millennials understand friend to mean, but it definitely wasn't what I thought it was. It was as if I had some kind of virus that seemed, at least to me, very noticeable from the outside. But when people looked at me, they couldn't see it. So I thought maybe I could ignore it a little longer too. And when I did start to mention how I felt and that I was worried, they'd either reassure me that there was nothing wrong with me at all, or tell me to go find help. I dialed the emergency counseling hotline at school one late night and told them about how I'd gotten my concussion. Ha ha ha, yeah, that'll do it. I didn't try to find help again after that. Not from psychologists or therapists anyway. The hospitals didn't want to help, the counselor didn't help, and there was no one that could give me the peace that I craved. I knew it was something that I would have to work to find for myself, but I was still in a pained state of being, a place that's hard to come back from. But as an artist, everyone will tell you it's a great place to be, a truly productive, normal place to be. That's not true, by the way. P.S. And I'll show you this. After each section, there are my sketches from that time period. Like, this is when I first started at Long Beach. And it says, "We never feel adequate with the amount of knowledge that we have." And this one says, "Sometimes new beginnings just suck." I told him, and then I died. This one. Some days I feel I have no limbs. On days like this, I either sink or swim. You know that feeling when everything just goes the right way and you say all the right things? Yeah, me either. And that's just... So this is like a chronicle of everything I just read. Oh wait, how do I do this one like this? I feel like a little kid right now, like sharing my, look at my drawings. But I thought about when I was writing this, like if I wanted to explain each one and really like create a timeline for things, but I'll probably do more of that like in the next part, because I wanted to emphasize more about, you know, like the feeling of it, and kind of express like, okay, this is how I felt in this crazy situation. So it's, if you do too, it's not that crazy. And this also doesn't clinically mention these things, but it's basically like also talking about, so this crazy thing happened, right? Like there was a terrorist attack, but the things that I was remembering and like feeling in that and like just after that situation was more like, you know, traumas that came back from before that, like things that I didn't even think that I was gonna think about again. And that's what was like in the forefront of my mind, not like, you know, like not specifically the actual event. So I noticed that initially there was this like this feeling like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to get out of this kind of domino effect kind of thing, where it's like I just kept experiencing all these like really severely traumatic things back to back, and then this thing happened and it was like, okay, definitely feel like this is never going to end. And I think that is what is, you know, dangerous about stuff like this really big thing that we're all experiencing right now, that we want to remember that not it's not crazy to feel like that, but it's also not true that, you know, oh, this is never going to end, because you know, I don't, I mentioned it like vaguely, but the stuff that I've been through, I did feel like that with, but like I also came to realize that there is an end to like your like physical response to things. So like you can eventually become aware of yourself enough that you understand that things, you are able to adapt to things. And however like oh my gosh, this is so painful, like you go through that like emotional state of being, but you can move forward from it, if that makes any sense. It sounds like like I'm saying that you stop caring, but that's not true. You don't stop caring, but you get to a point in yourself where you're like, okay, this sucks and this is terrible and I don't want to feel this anymore, but that you can get beyond that and move into the new self that understands that there's a future. But that transition there is the difficult part. Anyway, that's what this is talking about, and that I'm trying to do in like a more like anecdotal way. I don't know if it will wind up working for anybody, but maybe once I start putting out like the second and third part, it might. Does anybody want to like talk about that or interject with something? Hey, Marie. Nothing? Nobody? I'm just gonna wave at everybody then. Actually, I know that there's a delay. My my eternal optimism. I'm sure it's just a delay, and that's why no one's saying anything. Yeah, I don't want to read the whole book, but this was almost exactly a year ago that I published and wrote the book. It came out I think it was April 30th. I don't have it in front of me. April 30th of last year. And so I really want to, I'm still in the process of writing the second part. And I really want to be able to get it out. I might use something that's not Amazon this time though. Oh no! That sucks. Gigi, I'm sorry. Yeah. I might use a different service, but just because I don't know what Amazon's deal is gonna be with everything that's happening right now. I was trying to find a publisher. I had like a couple leads and then it just didn't go anywhere. Thank you. Yeah, that my sketchbook that came from, I was really like hardcore chronicling my whole progress. Right, yeah, because they're really different because they're more like me hyper focusing on like what I'm looking at. So like for example, this one, like it's so finely detailed. So because I'm like I'm really trying to like put my whole energy in like this is what I'm looking at, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm not thinking about anything else. Because like when I was doing these drawings, was when I was the most afraid, and that helped a lot in being able to like kind of like process that fear and move beyond that as like emotionally anyway, because that physical fear like takes also like a long time to get away from. And I was here like, you know, like people ask me like, well, how did you overcome this, and how do you overcome like all the stuff that you've been through? And it was, so the book is specifically like taking an example of the terrorist attack as the trauma, but I've been through it. It talks about like a whole bunch of different stuff that I've been through. And like I don't think that overcoming means that it's like gone. You know, I feel like people have this idea of it where it's like, you know, oh, how did you get over that like feeling? And it's like, yeah, at some point you have to let go of like the pain and the physical response that you get. Um, but I feel like that peace that you get when you overcome is cyclical, because there are things like this that bring the whole package of stuff back. You know, like I had been through like a ton of therapy, a lot of cognitive therapy, a lot of like EMDR, like all the um, really great stuff that works. You know, it's like really good. Um, um, And after this happened, it was like all out the window. Like I just was experiencing like every trauma at the same time. So I don't think that, I think that when something, after something happens, like you become a different self. Like you have like a this knowledge that you have to figure out how to like put back inside of your person, you know. And the thing that I grieve the most, having gone through this and like figuring everything out, was like I grieved the person that I was before it happened, because it's like, you know, oh, like I wish that I could go back to be that person again without the knowledge of the truth of this, you know? Like, I wish I didn't know that there was someone that could be so hateful that they killed 100 people. Like 100 people, almost 100 people died at this thing that I was at. And like, that was the thing that I was really overwhelmed by the most. Like, I wish I didn't know that. Like, I wish I couldn't feel that, you know, because we see it on the news all the time and it doesn't affect us. But like being in the space where that loss has happened is totally different, I think. And like, I think that that's why like there's a lot of communities who like they experience that on a regular basis, and they're so like frustrated because other people can't seem to identify like the, you know, that's something that they would deal with all the time. But I want to see, I understand, I think so too. It's like you just get thicker skin or inner skin, so you feel a bit immune to respond to it less panicking, right? So like you, because I look at it like you have a physical response and you have like an emotional response. And if both your head and your body are reacting to something that's already happened, and you're still inside the trauma, because it's like all of yourself is disconnected from the present, so you're still like trying to process that. But if like it's different if you're just if your heart is responding, right? Like if you don't feel that physical response, but it makes you sad, that's different. Or if it makes it, you get like you have like an emotional response. But if it's like overwhelming and physical, that's like, oh, you still have like a what, you know, you're still in the middle of it, like trying to figure it out. Hopefully, I don't know if that makes any sense. That's what I've come to understand, and it's hard, but not impossible. And hopefully I get this second book out. Um, I feel like with all the stuff going on right now, it would be very helpful. Excuse me. Does anybody else have anything they want to mention or ask or anything? Anything? Mm, well, oh gosh, yeah, I know. It is, I mean, Well, I don't know about what specific news you mean, or just like the general like chaos of what's happening right now. Because okay, so think about this too, is that there's a lot of people who right now are trying to protect themselves, right? Based off of the information that they know, like i.e., nurses, healthcare professionals who want to wear a mask. A lot of them are getting suspended and fired because their administration doesn't want them to wear a mask. For whatever reason, don't know the details about that. But imagine being in that situation. That is very traumatic, right? You see people dying from something you understand you need to protect yourself from, and then somebody tells you you're not allowed to do that. That's very traumatic. I think that collectively everyone's digesting this and going to respond to it in different ways. But that there is definitely something like on a massive scale that people are experiencing right now that is traumatic. And that to some degree, like they're gonna, you know, it's kind of interesting because, before, and maybe now, but before there were more people that maybe would never be able to understand this. And now I think there's going to be a lot more. And that it's gonna make it really important that everybody be able to like be really honest about what they're experiencing so that they can connect with each other, because I think that is really helpful to be able to just uh, like express, yes, this, I feel like this is what's going on with me, I feel totally insane. And then when you say it and you say the story out loud, like it makes it less like intimidating. And especially if someone else is there to be like, oh my gosh, I know, I totally feel the same way. It's really important to be honest right now. Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. Like everyone is your enemy and your friend at the same time. And also, what I noticed when I was really in it, um, I noticed that it was hard for me to be able to differentiate, right? Like it was hard for me to understand like who to trust, and then I would wind up trusting the wrong people. And there was like this weird thing where I almost kind of was doing it as like an escapist, as an escape, or to like prove something to myself. And you kind of wind up being at war with yourself a lot, and it's hard. That's why it's important to say it out loud and to somebody else, I think, so that they can hear it and be like, no, that doesn't make I don't think that makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? And I wound up doing that a lot, but you also have to be careful and really be familiar with the people that you're doing it with and know that you can trust them, because I wound up doing it with people that probably I shouldn't have been, and it wound up, being more, what's the word? I'm having trouble remembering words right now. I have so much going on in here with being more detrimental to like the process than if you had somebody trustworthy to share it with. Man, I've had so many really good conversations about this, and I really wish we could have like recorded it and done a live and stuff. That's what I really wanted to do too, is like share my book, but I also wanted to have like a some cool conversations, like uh, some sharing, some. I think it might be a little intimidating though, because it's like live. Um, yeah. Anything else, guys? Anything else? And even a good trustworthy person could have wrong info with no bad intent. That's true. That's very true. A trustworthy person could have wrong info with no bad intention. And they could also, say, so a trustworthy person and someone who understands you and who is well informed. Wow. That's so probably then at that point you just want to go straight to a professional, right? But even then, like, you have to be careful because there were some people also that I tried, right? Like I read about right now in my book, like that you try to go to for help and they like just kind of throw you completely off course still. Um, it's hard to be able to discern those things when you're trying to heal. And it's just really difficult. I don't know. I think writing about it too, like if you keep a diary or a journal, um, like that's what I was using my sketchbook as too, like as a journal to say, okay, this is where I was at, and this is how I felt there. Because I remember like when I look at these, I remember exactly where I was at mentally, emotionally, and I know like what had happened during that time. So I didn't specifically write about it, but I remember everything from this moment. And it kind of helped me with a timeline of like what my progress was and stuff like that, and who I was associating with at that time too. Professionals don't always have right info and do right things. That is true. That is true too. It's hard to find somebody to talk to that you can trust and that's gonna interact with you in the way that you need them to, which is why I think it's also important that like during the process you find like a strong sense of yourself, which is what I started to realize, I guess, like after this happened too, was that I didn't have a strong sense of myself, where like I felt confident because okay, so before this happened I was in a really terrible environment where people were like gaslighting me and just like I was in a really crazy situation and I left, but it left like a lot of damage and I didn't know how to trust myself. So if you don't know how to trust yourself, that's where it can get super dangerous too. Like, you have to be able to be like, okay, like, I understand this and this and that, even if you're not totally sure, and just be able to, like, have that conversation with yourself. I don't know. When I remember those times, I remember, like, being so overwhelmed by the feeling that I literally, like, couldn't do anything. I, like, couldn't function. I did, but I like internally wasn't really like able to be a normal human being, pretty much. Um, so yeah. I don't know how. I'm trying to remember too. Like, so I would feel so overwhelmed. Like when people say like I wanted to crawl out of my skin, I literally wished with all my being that I could like take myself out of myself and go like be somebody else or like just go somewhere else and not have to like feel that feeling. And I think too that resistance might have been like part of the issue, like being able to just feel those feelings and like look at them. It was really hard. Yeah. So anybody else have anything they want to add to that? How is everybody? At the beginning of this, I was like super triggered. Was anybody else triggered? Because I was hella triggered. And I slept for like exactly 5 days or something like that. It was probably more than that. I don't exactly remember. Oh, is that the guy who committed suicide? Yeah, that's so sad. How did it remind you of that? Just like the general feeling? Yeah, like when we first had to like you know, they were like just locking things down, and like at my job they sent us home, and telling people not to come outside because I got triggered at the beginning of that because that's exactly what happened. Like in France, we were like totally locked down. Like you couldn't leave the building. Um, Everybody was like closing up shop really fast because they were afraid because they didn't know what was going on, and there was a lot of panic. And I feel like I don't see like overt panic from people, but like I can like there's a general feeling of that like uh, oh yeah. It's funny because I feel like a lot of people understand it, but there's it's I think it's hard to explain. Yeah, that's interesting, huh? Like people who don't normally have anxiety know what it's like now. Yes, and I'm sure they're like having trouble coming to terms with that, right? Like how do I deal with this and what do I do? And like I've seen a lot of different groups start um you know like putting things together and like um start working together to I don't know, like the people who are making masks and doing stuff. I think a lot of that is like like coming together to find a solution to like help people, but I feel like a lot of it too is a like a internal like response. Like I can't do anything else, and but I can do this thing. Yep, it's only possible in music and or art. That's kind of how I like. So after I was done sleeping, I slept for like a week, and then I was like waiting to hear back about our work. So, and, like if we should go back or what we were gonna do. And then I went down a deep rabbit hole. Like, okay, I need to do something because otherwise I'm just gonna like I don't know, get lost in the fear of it. So I just went in and like started putting myself into different task force and stuff, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. And for me it's like that, like keeping busy is good. Even back then too, like even if it wasn't like for anything, I would just um draw or paint or write, and like if I was done with something I would just go to the next thing and be like, okay, I did this drawing, but now I'm gonna paint, but now I'm gonna do this and that, like I just had to keep doing something. Now general public know what it's like to almost go insane. Yeah, they do. So almost, yeah, and you know what? Like I feel like if not now, that at some point when like things get really, really bad, they're gonna know, or they might go crazy. That's why I keep saying to people too, like there needs to be something that people can access easily, that like so that when things get really bad, because now is like just the beginning, um that's what we really need, um I am gonna put together a list of stuff for this area, like okay, here are all the different like efforts that are being made, and these are the ones, this is how you can like help or join or give money or literally do anything, because I don't know, I am not the kind of person that can just like sit back and watch shit happen. um like I don't know how I would be able to just like sit and relax through this, because I need to feel like I'm being useful. And I think that there's a lot of people like that too, that need to feel like they're doing something. But they don't know what it's like to do or be so alone, because now it's very understandable for everyone to feel anxious, which I kind of think ridiculous, to be honest. Oh, like it's normal to be anxious now instead of, and whereas before it wasn't that normal. Yeah, see? Uh, right, like they don't know. So that's what I mean too about like the different selves, right? Because it's really testing people's emotional intelligence. And if you haven't really needed to like expand on that, like now is really when it's going to show, because you're not going to know how to tend to yourself and your own needs, plus like be able to react to other people around you, and that's a lot of work, you know. And I think that's why right now people are like tired, and they are okay with like just staying like kind of, not wanting to interact. But also, I think that that is actually why a lot of people are also not responding to the stay at home policy thing, because that's another like type of response, right? Like, oh my god, I can't be by myself, like I need to go interact and like distract myself, because being inside alone like is going to drive me insane. So I feel like people literally just need to get these like something together, so people have something to access and be like, oh, okay, like I'm not really alone. Like I can go on this and feel like I have a purpose still. Um yeah, I can understand that too. Like, oh shit, I need to go like party and be around people, because I have no idea how to respond to this otherwise. So I think the live only stays up for an hour, and we have like 1 more minute left. Right, yeah. They haven't practiced that yet. And I haven't seen, I don't know if you guys know like where there's supposed to be like therapy, like virtual therapy available. I keep hearing about that, but I haven't seen it anywhere. Terror theory is a psych concept that says at times becomes so overwhelmed by just ignore it, right? But I understand people need help from others. Yeah. Yep. Ignoring it sometimes is way easier. I mean, it's one of the main theories that explains why more people aren't doing it right. But now we can figure it out. 5 seconds left. But thanks for